Hello, BookTube. We're continuing on with my library tour, and I believe I can see the light at the end of the tunnel of the darkest depths of Mordor. We are in this recessed hutch, which has lots of open space. And when you don't have regimented shelves and you're a bookworm, you tend to fill open space with books just willy-nilly. And that's what I have done, and we're working our way through it, but I honestly think that we're close to the end of Mordor, which I didn't believe was possible. The only thing that made it possible was piling books on the floor. I couldn't possibly have shifted things around in this space. There are too many books, but that's not going to stay true. The whole point of this library tour is to decrease the number of books by handling everyone, looking at every single book in the light of day, and that helps with the decision to winnow, to cull. So we're just going to continue on. Those of you who are not particularly interested in comic books, in graphic novels, or comic book collections, there's probably not going to be a lot in this video for you. There are, I noticed, a couple of things, but mostly this seems to be where, for this section, this seems to be where the bulk of these things have gone. The book tour of Mordor is not going to end that way, but this next one is a lot of that. Like, for instance, here, I'll put these together. No reason why they shouldn't be. This is very early. I don't know why these are all separate like this. Let's put them together. That's a good exercise. These are very early manga from Viz Comics. I don't even know if they exist anymore. This is the first run of a manga series called Crying Freeman. Can't imagine what drew my eye to the cover. And that just continues. These are absolutely beautiful. They're absolutely wonderful. Not just the main character, but the whole thing. There's issue number 2. And these came out originally in these $3.50 square-bound installments. And this is the whole first arc, which I believe goes to 8 or 9 of these volumes. And by random chance... the woman who was the proprietor of my LCS, my local comic shop, at the time that these came out, probably in the early 90s, this tiny little French-Canadian woman turned out to be a big fan of this series. I have a feeling that I know why, but one way or another, she read the first issue that came to her shop, and she really recommended it. It's the story of a young man who is an artist. He is sensitive, and he is kidnapped by a criminal gang and basically programmed to be a merciless killer. He's also physically conditioned, so that the feats of physical activity that he can do are virtually supernatural. And the programming worked. He becomes the #1 assassin of this criminal organization, but they can't quite eliminate his original nature. So every time he kills someone, he involuntarily cries. And the story opens with a young woman out in the wilderness painting. She's painting when she is the innocent bystander to an assassination committed by this main character. And he sees her, and she sees him. And then, the action takes him in different directions, and she goes home and prepares to die. She's sure that she knows what she's seen, and she's sure that she knows that she won't be allowed to stay alive. Having seen the face of the killer, she's sure that the killer will come for her. And she has only one request of him. She has a request for something that he should do before he kills her. She would like him to make her a woman. And the proprietress of this comic shop, where I went to get my Thor and my Fantastic Four and whatnot, read this and thought it was really, really good. The story is by Kazuo Koike, and the art is by Ryoichi Ikegami. And I guess that the artist is legendary. Certainly the art is incredible. The art is absolutely amazing. It's photorealistic in its locations and in its exposition. That's all just manga-ized photographs, but the action is amazing. This is just a tiny glimpse of it. I don't know how much you can tell, but it was $3.50, which was a lot for a comic book back then. But On her recommendation, I got it, and I really liked it. I really, really liked it. Not just for the artwork, but just for the whole story. I really liked it. I was on board for the next one, and I eventually got the whole of the first story arc of Crying Freeman, and eventually ended up getting them all. I actually have a stack that comes all the way up to your waist of these reprinted single volumes that made a multi-part story. And eventually, later on, they were color, but these are all black and white, and I love them. I have this first arc here on this shelf. I don't actually know off the top of my head where I have all the others. And I know I don't have any Crying Freeman collections. I'm not even sure how many there have been in English. I don't know, for instance, Crying Freeman is over, so I don't know. Has there been a big anthology that collects all of Ikegami's artwork? I don't know. I never actually bothered to look into it. Okay, this is another great artist. This is American. This is P. Craig Russell, and this is just a collection of his bits and pieces. We've seen him before on this channel, I believe, and this is just his sumptuous artwork. A collection of shorts that he did for various independent companies. Okay, this next one is something that we've seen before. This is The Shadow, Blood and Judgment. This is the original copy that I got for, what, $4.95? $12.95 back when it first came out. I bought the 4 individual issues that made up this miniseries that revives the old pulp character of The Shadow. And then I love them so much. It's all by Howard Chaykin. So I got the graphic novel, even though $12.95 was a lot of money at the time. And then we saw on this tour that recently it was reprinted. The whole thing was reprinted, not by DC, but I think by Dynamite or something like that. They reprinted this, and I'll get any reprint that I can get. A hardcover would be great. Those are the original comic books, the original issues of the comic book. I was a big fan of The Shadow, so I grabbed it anyway. I would have grabbed it anyway, but it turned out to be so good. Okay, this is Marvel. This is Frank Miller and David Mazzucchelli. This is one of the greatest superhero graphic novels of all time. This is Daredevil Born Again. And this is, it's drawn by David Mazzucchelli with just unbelievable skill. And it's written by Frank Miller, and it's all about the Marvel Comics superhero Daredevil, who I don't particularly like. But I got the first issue of this when it was coming out as a monthly comic, and was blown away by how good it was. It's standard fare. It's Daredevil fighting the Kingpin. It's Daredevil saving the people around him. But the individual individual scenes are just amazing, just incredible. The skill involved in writing this is Miller at his best. So it's had a couple of subsequent reprintings, and I get all of those reprints. Every time this thing is reprinted, every time Born Again comes out as a reprint, I get it. But I never keep them. I always want to give it to people, because this is an entry-level comic that is so good that I end up getting those new reprints and then giving them away and keeping my ratty old one. Okay, another perfect example of that exact process. This is the original graphic novel of Dark Knight Returns. Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns, which was an Elseworld story about an older Batman, a 50-year-old Batman who comes out of retirement in a hellish dystopian world. And this again also was a 4-issue miniseries, and I got the first issue of that miniseries, and was once again blown away. I thought it was absolutely incredible. And then I got the second issue and started to get the intimation that although I was still loving this comic, I was not going to like its treatment of Superman. And boy, oh boy, did that turn out to be true. Superman turns out to be a fascist lickspittle, but there's no denying the greatness of this thing. And once again, the reason that I have this ratty old trade paperback is because every time I get a new version, this is reprinted all the time, every time I get a new version that's nice and clean, I want to give it to somebody. I want to send it to somebody, so I don't end up keeping the new version. Okay, this is this was, I believe, a 4-issue miniseries of Matt Wagner's character Grendel, just a warrior named Grendel. This is done by Darko Makan and Edvin Bukovic, who were living in Croatia during a war when they did this. And the thing is called, it's Grendel Tales, but the arc here is Devils and Deaths. And I kept it because it's so good. I'm not a big fan of Grendel. I don't really care about the character or the ethos or the backstory at all. But these stories are tremendous. Just tremendous. So I kept it even though it's not my standard superhero fare. Uh, okay. All right. Okay. This is Howard Chaykin again. The writer Howard Chaykin. In this case, he is not doing the art. In this case, the art was done by Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, who I've mentioned on this channel before, is fantastic. He's just incredible as an artist. And this is a weird thing. I don't know if this was ever made into one volume. These are the individual volumes that I got at the comic shop, called Twilight. A series in which Chaykin rewrites, reimagines all of the future heroes of DC Comics between the era of superheroes, Superman, Batman, and whatnot, and the era of the Legion of Superheroes. In DC Comics, there's a 1,000-year gap that has characters in it, like, you know, Space Cabbie or Tommy Tomorrow or whatever, but no unified timeline until you get to the Legion, until you get to the start of the Legion of Superheroes 1,000 years from the present day. In between then and there, it's a wilderness, and Chaykin obviously thought that was a playground, so he just went to town with these characters, and a lot of it is very interesting. None of the characters even remotely resemble what their old, you know, cheesy Julius Schwartz era incarnations were in comic books, but really good to read. I don't know if Twilight has ever been collected in one volume. I'd love it if it were, because the Jose Luis Garcia Lopez artwork is just amazing. It's just incredible. Okay, what else? What have we got next here? Oh, okay. This is a Marvel Masterworks volume of the Submariner. His, you know, not his first run with Marvel Comics, but I think this was his long second run. And it was mostly written by Roy Thomas, mostly art by Sal Buscema, sometimes other people, and it has 9 issues. I mainly got it for these three, for the three final issues, in which events lead up to the marriage of the Submariner and end in tragedy. And I bought these original issues. Of course, I bought these original issues for 15 cents. And this one, you're not going to be able to make out the details there. But that one, that is the issue of the death of the lead up to the death of the Lady Dorma, a character with 20 years of history who was going to be Namor's beloved. Tremendous, tremendous stuff. Lots and lots of fun in those issues. I got this Masterworks volume because my individual issues are falling apart. I didn't really reckon on the fact that this has lots of stuff in it that I won't ever reread. So that's the problem with Masterworks volumes, is they're just going in straight chronological order. Okay, all right. Okay, this is a blast from 1975. I bought this on the newsstand, and it is an old issue of Marvel 2-in-1, which was a team-up book in which the Thing, the ever-loving blue-eyed Thing, Benjamin Grimm, the idol of millions, was from the Fantastic Four, was teamed up every month with a new Marvel character, with a different Marvel superhero. And the Marvel 2-in-1 lasted forever, and a lot of its issues were really, really good. It had high points and low points. But this is Marvel 2-in-1 number 9, in which the Puppet Master, a Fantastic Four villain who can control people with, you know, little dolls, sort of kind of remote control voodoo, gets an amped up version, a nuclear amped up version of his figurine of Thor, and is able to turn him against the Fantastic Four. And that's basically the plot. He just sends a mind-controlled Thor to the Baxter Building to fight the Fantastic Four. They don't suspect that he's coming. They don't have any idea that he's on his way. And he dispatches Reed Richards and the Human Torch and Sue Richards in about a minute. And then he has to face the Thing. And that is also not an even contest. Thor is much stronger than the Thing, much more powerful, easily able to defeat him. But he's fighting against his own mind control, and the Thing realizes that. I snapped this up on the stand because of this gorgeous Gil Kane cover. That is just, oh, look at that. It's a shame that half the real estate is the logo, but still, that is just a gorgeous cover. I snapped it up even though the artwork on the inside is by Herb Trimpe, who was for a long time the regular artist on the Hulk, and who is, I think, one of the least talented mainstream legendary era Marvel comic artists that have ever been. And I think that deep down inside, Stan Lee also shared that opinion. I think he had a regular guy for the Hulk, a regular scripter, a regular penciler that wouldn't miss deadlines, that would always turn in his work and do it just right. But I don't know what else would explain the number of letters that Stan Lee published in the letters column of the Hulk itself from fans saying, I love this magazine, but I can't stand Herb Trimpe's artwork. It's so bad. Why would Stan Lee decide to publish all of those letters if he wasn't... Well, I don't know. Okay, all right. These are also from Marvel 2-in-1. These are earlier issues. This is The Thing and Captain America. They decide to time travel to the future to help the future of Earth fight off its alien conquerors. Another great Gil Kane cover. And in that far future, they are joined by the Guardians of the Galaxy. Not the super cool, ironic, fourth wall breaking icons of the billion-dollar cinema franchise, but another version of them, the original comic book version of the Guardians of the Galaxy. Just a 2-part story. I loved it, so I must have loved it because I've kept it all this time. Okay, a Marvel Epic Collection. These are Marvel reprint volumes in full color, and this one is the Silver Surfer. All sorts of original appearances. This is from his original appearance when Galactus comes to Earth in the Fantastic Four, all the way to right on the doorstep, I believe, of... right on the doorstep of when he was done by other people. For the longest time, these are all by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, for the longest time, Stan Lee made it known in the Marvel Comics bullpen that all other characters are up for grabs, but that he wanted to be the person to write the Silver Surfer, that this character had a special place in his heart. And that edict stayed true for a long time, so other writers never got a chance to do this, and Stan Lee always worked with Jack Kirby on this character. So this is the volume of the character's introduction. The character became hugely popular. Okay, we go from comic books to a kid's book. This is a classic by Clancy Holling, and this is Paddle to the Sea. About a little toy boat that makes its way across a vast swath of territory. This is from 1941. It is an absolute classic. It's an absolute classic of the kids' book. Great when you're when you're reading it to kids and showing it to them. It's great to show them. It's great to demonstrate to them distances and perseverance. It's a great book for perseverance. It's a great book for just keep going, and you'll be helped along the way. Okay, this is by Nancy Willard with artwork by Jerry Pinkney. This is A Starlit Somersault Downhill, a kid's book, I believe about the approach of winter. This is about the approach of winter, where, let's see here, this is next library book. The rabbit wants to hibernate with a bear, but of course the rabbit doesn't hibernate, so it starved to death, so it has to come up with an alternative to that. Let's see. Oh, okay, alright, great. I didn't know I had any of these left. This is a fantastic thing. This comes out every year. I strongly advise it. I strongly advise that you save up your shekels and buy this every year. It's not cheap. It's about $35. This is Spectrum. Big oversized paperback volume. Your Barnes & Noble, your local retail store will have it. And it's a collection of the fantasy and science fiction artwork of that year. So science fiction and fantasy book covers, comic book posters, industry posters, individually commissioned artwork, and some of it, not all of it, of course, it's 1,000 different artists, so there are going to be many styles that don't suit you. But I just daydream in these volumes, just endlessly. They're so good for that. Like, look at that. That is an artist's interpretation of Mowgli from the Jungle Book, resting on the bosom of Baloo the bear. That is just incredible. And there are many more. Like, for instance, in these volumes, there's always quite a bit of Tolkien. One thing I've noticed that the... look at that. One thing that I've noticed that the artists... These artists are all nerds, of course, of the First Water. One thing I've noticed that they absolutely cannot resist, so it's in every single annual of Spectrum, is Eowyn against the King of the Nazgul. That's not Eowyn, of course, that's just a random picture. She's in here somewhere, though, I guarantee. There's a version of that moment in every one of these volumes. But these are incredible. you can just daydream in these pictures just endlessly. I love it. I love it for that. I didn't think I had any Spectrum volumes. I thought they were all gone, but maybe I have others. Let's see. Oh, all right. Well, this is a graphic novel. It's a very old one. One of the first ones. Was $5.95. A lot of money at the time. This is The Death of Captain Marvel. I believe this is one of Marvel's very first graphic novels. And this is, does it say whether or not it is? No, this is Jim Starlin. He wrote it and drew it. He was incredibly inventive. Of course, now he will be known as the creator of Thanos, but Thanos is in here, of course. Thanos was the enemy of Captain Marvel, his arch foe for a long time before he became the enemy of the whole world. And this was groundbreaking. It couldn't happen in a comic book. In which DC Comics, the honchos at DC Comics gave Jim Starlin the permission to kill a character, to kill Captain Marvel. And he doesn't kill him in combat or a heroic end. Captain Marvel has cancer and slowly withers away and dies in the course of this book. While all of his friends try to save him, they can't. They can't do it. And that's it. That's the book. And that's it. The back panel is just that. An amazing story. Extremely good. Extremely touching. Been reprinted a million times by Marvel. But very unconventional. Okay, talk about unconventional. Okay, this is a Daredevil story, another Daredevil story. I don't care about Daredevil at all. This is another story of Daredevil versus the Kingpin, but this was a collaboration that I couldn't miss. This is another very early graphic novel. This is, I don't know what the title of this thing is. I think it's just called Daredevil. Love and War is the name of it. And it's written by Frank Miller and drawn by Bill Sienkiewicz. And it's Sienkiewicz at his most weird, at his right at the time when he was ceasing to be commercially viable as a panel-by-panel monthly comic book artist, where he was starting to become such an auteur that you couldn't ask him to do that sort of thing anymore. And it's weird. It also has been reprinted many times. I really like it, mainly for the artwork. I'm not a big fan of Daredevil. It's going to be hard for you to tell that in these graphic novels. But let's see. Oh, okay, all right. This is Brian Kane's book about Hal Foster, the great illustrator of Tarzan and especially Prince Valiant. And this is just a big illustrated biography and career of Hal Foster. Just an amazing keepsake of a book. I'm a big fan of Hal Foster. I've read this book a few times. I've actually gone back to it too. When you can hear this shelf is fighting. I've gone back to it to reference it with other things as well. So this thing is just not working. See, this is why I thought this wouldn't work. Okay, this is another collection. This is a collection, just a retrospective of Superman, my favorite superhero. This is Superman cover to cover, but it's been buried in a number of different places here because the cover is scuffed on the front and the back. But this is what it looks like. There are all the incarnations of Superman. I have read this character and loved him in all of these incarnations. Even when the incarnation itself wasn't doing me any great shakes, you've got Wayne Boring, Neil Adams, Ed McGuinness. You've got the great Kurt Swan, not once but twice. John Byrne, whole bunch. Look at that. That is just amazing. And this follows the character all the way from his earliest appearances to the end of the present day when this thing came out, which I think was 10 years ago. I'm a sucker for this sort of thing. I absolutely love it. These retrospectives, these illustrated retrospectives, so of course I have this, although it shouldn't be here, buried like this. Okay, this next one is a children's book. It is an absolute classic. If you don't have it, you should. If you go and find a copy, you're going to love it. This is by Jackie French with artwork by Bruce Watley, and it is Diary of a Wombat. And it is the story of a persistent and somewhat dim-witted wombat who itemizes what he does. Morning, slept. Afternoon, slept. Evening, ate grass. Scratched. Night, slept. And he encounters, you get page after page of that. The wombat really doesn't vary its routine at all until it meets a family. and the family gives him carrots, and that's all it takes. So he does battle with the monster outside their front door, and eventually vanquishes it. This is just it's an absolute classic of a kid's book, and it is also, I can attest, a surefire winner to read to kids. They just love it. Let's see here. Okay, this is not a kid's book. This is one of the many, you get companion volumes like this to art museums all the time. This is the Boston Museum of Fine Arts. This is the Boston Tradition, American Artists. Just you could fill a whole bookcase with books like this to accompany various exhibits. So I have this one. I don't know why. I could have plenty of others. Oh God, this is collapsing. Okay, this is more Frank Miller. This is Frank Miller and Jim Lee. This is Batman and Robin the Boy Wonder. Frank Miller's reimagination of the very earliest years of Batman, his beginning years as a crime fighter. It's beautifully drawn. Just beautifully drawn. Just gorgeous. And it's intentionally provocative and all that sort of stuff. Miller intended it to be provocative. He has Batman cursing and abusing Robin as a child and whatnot. He intended it to be controversial. I have it mainly for the artwork. Okay, more Daredevil. Good Lord. All right, this is Visionaries. This is Daredevil Visionaries, Volume 3. This is Frank Miller again. This is where he shot to superstardom when he took over the writing and the artwork chores for Daredevil. And gave a main story to Daredevil's love interest, Elektra, the assassin Elektra. And there were 2 volumes before this, obviously, and there's lots and lots of Frank Miller Daredevil. And I have this volume because I think that Miller's original treatment of the death and rebirth of Elektra in this run of Daredevil is amazing. Just amazing. I was just blown away by it when I was getting the individual issues. And it made me all the more angry that Marvel Comics decided to just bring back this character. So Elektra is alive now. She's a normal superhero in the normal superhero universe. Just totally wrong. Just totally wrong. And a decision that thankfully they've never officially made with Captain Marvel. I mean, when a character gets a send-off as good as the death of Captain Marvel or the end of Elektra in this story arc, it should be permanent. If the send-off is a work of art, then you should respect that and just have it be permanent. Okay, what have we got next here? More graphic novels. This is Nexus. The character Nexus. Actually, there's quite a few here. This is Mike Barron and Steve Rude. They two guys from Madison who just created this character, this far future character, Horatio Hellpop, who has enormous cosmic powers as the character Nexus, and whose job is to kill mass murderers. Nexus's reason for being, is to kill mass murderers. Tremendous stuff. So much is going on in the Nexus universe that calling it a superhero comic is a ridiculous thing to do. And also summarizing it as a guy who kills mass murderers is also a ridiculous thing to do. There's so much else going on. The two of them just ran with it. And I am waiting. Someday there will be a big remastered, universal, comprehensive omnibus collection of Nexus instead of all the millions of collections that there have been over the years. And I'm hoping that I live to see that, because I would love to go through the whole Nexus storyline from beginning to end once more. Let's see. Okay, this is a Marvel Comics premiere classic. This is a book called X-Force. It was written by Fabian Nicienza, and it was drawn by Greg Capullo. Greg Capullo is great. He is one of the great comic book artists of our time, and he is constantly working now. And this was the first time that I really became aware of his artwork. I don't care about X-Force at all. I don't care about any of the extended X-Men soap opera. But I absolutely loved, when I was reading these issues, I absolutely loved his artwork. I have this volume purely for the artwork. Okay, this is a surprisingly well-drawn graphic novel of High School Musical, the greatest musical of all time. The artwork is, I think, heavily computer-assisted, but really, really good. So again, I have it for the artwork. Okay. This also, believe it or not, I have for the artwork. You're not going to believe it. This is this is the Longfellow poem, The Courtship of Miles Standish. Just once upon a time, a long time ago, school children had to memorize large chunks of it. They don't anymore. Longfellow is long since forgotten. But The Courtship of Miles Standish was really popular. It was a really popular long narrative poem of his. And a long time ago, this is probably 100 years old, our publisher brought this out in a lovely hardcover illustrated edition. The illustrations are by Howard Chandler Christie, who's will be very familiar to connoisseurs of period artwork for his commercial work. He did lots and lots of commercial work, the Gibbs Girl and all that. But he did this volume. He did full color page illustrations and also black and white spot illustrations for The Courtship of Miles Standish. What it's doing here, I don't know. I need to reinforce this thing, and then I do periodically reread Longfellow. Once again, I am waiting for Penguin Classics or somebody like that to come out with an enormous volume of the complete poetry of Longfellow, all the long narrative poems and all the other stuff. It would be a 1,000-pager for Penguin, and I wish they would do that. I wish somebody would do that. I will gladly write the introductory essay for such a volume, free of charge. Okay, here's another Marvel Masterworks. This is the X-Men. This is the great run by Chris Claremont and John Byrne that features the story of Dark Phoenix that was just recently the storyline of the biggest X-Men bomb in theatrical history. The story is Jean Grey, an original member of the X-Men, losing control of herself. A classic John Byrne storyline that never goes away, never seems to go away. He doesn't do comics anymore, but for the longest time, if you got John Byrne in a comic, whether it was the Fantastic Four or the X-Men or She-Hulk or anything, the nearest powerful female character would lose control of her powers and need to be controlled by some man in the storyline, or many men in the storyline. And in this case, it undeniably makes for great drama. But that would be great if it were a one-off. But when you start to see John Byrne involved in, She-Hulk going insane, or the Invisible Woman and the Fantastic Four taking on a sadomasochistic alternate personality, or the Scarlet Witch suddenly becoming a supervillainess for no reason whatsoever, except that Byrne wants to draw her in threatening poses. When you start to see this happen over and over again from the same guy, it starts to feel a little creepy. Okay, we're going to have to wrap this up because I can't control all of this from falling over anymore. So we'll just stop with this one. This is the big New Yorker Book of Dogs, which is just it's not. You might think when you look at this that it's a collection of New Yorker dog cartoons. I have many of those, but this is more of a retrospective on the New Yorker's association with dogs. So this has not only classic illustrations, but also classic articles on dogs. And this was on my very first iMac. I cut this out of the New Yorker and I posted it on my first iMac, and a number of my friends also sent it to me when it came out. The classic New Yorker cartoon on the internet. Nobody knows you're a dog. I had a lot of friends send me that, and I loved it too. So I put it. Sometimes when the mockery is spot on, you just have to go with it. So I put it on my iMac, and that is it. That is this next batch of the books in Mordor, and we're gonna continue tomorrow. But I believe we're also going to finish tomorrow. I'm pretty sure that we can get through all the rest of this tomorrow. We're going to give it a good try. If I can't do it in 30 minutes tomorrow, then it probably can't be done. And then we'll move on. But tomorrow, I think, will be the last one. And those of you who aren't particularly interested in comic books, I believe we've exhausted the last of them this time around. So all the rest of this will be oversized books, it looks like. So we'll just forge on to there tomorrow, and we'll see what we see. So I'll see you then. Thank you, BookTube.